Hey folks, Eric Bray, Focus Fishing Guide Service. Got another video fishing report for you for Table Rock. It is actually Monday, October 22nd. A few days late last week, day early this week. Doesn't make up for last week, but I've got stuff going on all week, so I figured I'd get this done early rather than waiting till Thursday or Friday to put this out. As far as our lake level is concerned, we are at 912.20, just like we were about this time last week, which puts us 4.8 feet down, basically 5 feet down. Corps hasn't done a whole lot with the water level. Didn't get much rain this past weekend. They're still running water in the afternoon to meet power demands. So I don't expect this to change unless we get some substantial rain. I really just don't think anything is going to change until we get some substantial rain. As far as our water temperature, we are, it's mixed, but for the most part, you're in the mid-60s. When I launched this morning down here by the dam, we were at 65.5. By the time we got off the water, we were at 66.5. I know up the James, I was up there earlier this week, or last week, Friday, and it was about 64 in the morning and warmed up to about 65. So you're in that mid-60s. Pretty much everywhere all over the lake, and the fish are moving, and they're moving throughout the day. And that's one thing I'm seeing a lot of guys not catching or not realizing as they're fishing, that you've got to, these fish are moving shallow, but remember, they're not going to stay up there all day long when it's a bright sunny bluebird sky day like today. They're going to back off once the sun comes up. So just because you caught them at 7 o'clock in the morning in 8 foot of water doesn't mean you're going to catch them up there all day. But if you guys are coming down, so you're going to fish the lower end of the lake, that's where I am today. Today we fished a football jig and a spider jig all day long. Fished the half-ounce jewel football jig. Pretty much just fished Okeechobee blue and green pumpkin candy. Matched that up with a UV beaver and a J-tail. They didn't seem to bite one versus the other any better, but they bit very good. Kind of fished that once the sun came up, earlier in the day when they were a little bit shallower. We were catching them on the Jewel Pro Spider Jig, the 5/16, same colors, Okeechobee blue, green pumpkin candy, peanut butter and jelly. Had a speed craw on that and had a beaver on that, the UV beaver on that as well. Early they were up less than 10 feet deep, most of them 5 to 8 feet deep. As the sun came up, as the fog burned off, they backed out, and most of the fish we caught on the football jig were 15 to 20, even 25 foot deep. Same locations, same gravel and rock mix points, main lake and secondary, but you got to move with the fish. If you're catching them shallow and all of a sudden it shuts off, keep an eye on your graph. You start seeing fish underneath your boat when you're sitting in 15, back off and throw to those fish. That's where we're catching most of the fish once the sun comes up. Threw a topwater a little bit yesterday down here. Topwater bite's just not going gangbusters yet. You can catch a few, right day, right time. The stars align. You can catch a few on a whopper plopper, a few on a spook, a few on a Yozuri popper, but it's not great yet. The shad really aren't up. They're not back in the backs of the creeks, at least down here yet. So have a topwater handy, but don't rely on it as a pattern. You can still catch them deep, but I haven't fished deep in a week or so. I'll be honest with you, I said this last week, I'm kind of tired of fishing a drop shot. I'm kind of tired of fishing a spoon. We do that all summer. If I can move up shallow and catch them, I'd much rather do that, and that's what I've been doing down here at the dam area. Go up into Kimberling City, same bites are working. You're going to want to have a football jig tied on, Jewel half or 5/8 ounce, Okeechobee blue, green pumpkin candy, peanut butter and jelly, watermelon candy. Match that with either a J-tail or a UV beaver or a speed craw. And again, it seems like those fish, once they move out deep, you want to use that heavier jig and catch them out there off those gravel runouts, off those ledgy type banks. That's where we're catching most of those fish. And really, it's between about 15 and 25 foot deep. Earlier in the day, you can catch them shallower using a Pro Spider jig. 5/16, same colors, Okeechobee blue, green pumpkin candy, watermelon candy, peanut butter and jelly. All those are working. Matched up with a J-tail, speed craw, or a UV beaver. All those are working really good up in that, probably 5 to 15 foot range. Tend not to hang that lighter jig up, so it's a little bit better. You can work it a little bit better up there without hanging up in the rocks. But both of those are working. Start with the light jig, go to the heavier jig. Gravel mixed with rock points. basically main lake and secondary. We're catching them all over, not just on the main lake, catching them up there shallow too, or back in the creeks as well. Topwater bite was a little bit stronger when I was up in Kimberling City on Friday. It seemed to, or I guess it was Saturday, but topwater bite was a little bit stronger. Whopper plopper, spook, Yozuri popper, all those were working. Seems like those fish, the topwater fish, are still on those steeper banks, and it also seems that that seems to be where the largemouth are. Not necessarily a bluff bank, but at least a 45-degree chunk rock type bank. Caught a few fish doing that. Early bite kind of waned when the sun came out on Saturday, but you know we did catch them up there as well. Again, the deep bite's working, but I'm not fishing it. I'm just not in the drop shot and they're spooning right now. If that's your deal, you want to do it, you can catch them on a drop shot and a spoon right now up there. And then a crankbait bite. I've not really broke out the crankbaits yet, but I've talked to a lot of guys who are starting to catch a few on a rock crawler and a few on a wiggle wart and a few on a curve 55. Plan on doing a bunch of that the next couple of days, but you know, they're not catching a ton of fish, but they do seem to be catching a few better quality fish by throwing a crankbait on those chunk rock banks and those mixed rocks and gravel banks from about 8 to about 15 foot deep. So fishing that deep, you're probably going to have a rock crawler more than anything else, but paralleling those banks in that 8 to 12 to 15 foot range. Again, I haven't done it yet. I plan on doing it this week, and I'll let you guys know if it's working yet next week, but I have talked to some guys who are catching them in the Kimberling City area and up the rivers doing that. And go up into the James. I was up the James on Friday. Didn't go real far up. Jig bite is still strong up there, just like down here. You know, have a jig, have a Jewel Pro Spider jig tied on, 5/16 Okeechobee Blue, Green Pumpkin Candy, Missouri Crawl, typical colors. Match it with either a J-tail, Speed Craw, or a UV Beaver. Catching a few on a shaky head as well, the Jewel Squirrel Head up there. Same sort of locations, gravel mixed with rock. Early in the day, they're up there from about 5 to 15 foot deep. As the sun comes out, back out, follow those fish out if it's sunny. If it's a cloudy day, they'll stay up there shallow all day. But if it's a sunny day, back out to that 15 to 25 foot range, switch up to a football jig. 1/2 ounce, 5/8 ounce, Jewel football jig, Okeechobee Blue, Green Pumpkin Candy. The same colors are working, just it's a little bit heavier jig, a little bit easier to field on the bottom, a little bit easier to cover water too. And matching that up again with a J-tail or a UV Beaver. Either of those baits are working. Go up the river a little bit, and there was a decent spinnerbait bite last week. Throwing it around wood cover. Just that's the key. Seems like the largemouth, you find those flatter banks or flatter pockets, and there's a little bit of wood cover in there. Throw a War Eagle spinnerbait, white and chartreuse, or all white. Throw it back around that cover and kill it close to the end of the cover. Did catch a few doing that, and again, I did not throw the crankbait up there, but I've talked to a few guys who are catching them on either a rock crawler, a wiggle wart, or a curve 55, and fishing it from about that 8 to 12 to 15 foot range on those steeper banks, which kind of makes sense. That's where we were catching the topwater fish, is on those steeper 45-degree banks with a bigger rock mixed into it, so it makes sense that if they're not eating that topwater, they'll probably eat a crankbait. So definitely going to give that a shot this week as well. Go up into the White River, and you know the White River's got the same bites going on. You definitely want to have a jig tied on. You want to have either the Jewel Pro Spider jig in 5/16 or 7/16, especially early in the day. Okeechobee Blue, Green Pumpkin Candy, Watermelon Candy. Match that up with a J-tail. Match that up with a UV Beaver. Match it up with a Speed Craw, and fish those gravel mixed with rock points. Main lake and secondary, 5 to 15 foot deep. That's where they're going to be first thing in the morning. Fish those points out. Sun starts to come up, starts to get a little bit brighter out. Back out. You can still fish the spider jig. I usually opt for a football jig because I'm trying to cover water a little bit more, so I tend to parallel or 45-degree those banks with a 1/2 ounce or 5/8 Jewel football jig. Okeechobee Blue, Green Pumpkin Candy, Watermelon Candy, all those colors are working, and again matched up with either a J-tail or a Beaver or Speed Craw. All those are working. Fishing out there on those mixed rock and gravel points, main lake and secondary on the White River. Spinnerbait bite was pretty good up there as well, especially towards the back of the bigger creeks. Like Big Creek had some fish in it we caught on a spinnerbait. Mill Creek up there around Shell Knob. Some of those bigger creeks are holding some better fish, some better largemouth, but you really need to key on wood cover. Wood cover is key for catching those fish on a spinnerbait. So make sure you're throwing it around wood cover, throwing the War Eagle 3/8 or ½ ounce, white and chartreuse or white and gold have been my two best colors up there doing that. Again, the topwater bite was mediocre at best, but we are still catching a few on a topwater. The Spook, Whopper Plopper, Yozuri Popper, all those are working on those steeper chunk rock banks, and that seems to work both main lake and back in the creek. So have that tied on, get the right day, either early in the day or you get a good cloudy day, you can catch a few fish doing that as well. Guys, it is almost the end of October. We got one more week and we're into November. Fishing's been good. I mean, we fished a jig for 4 hours this morning and I don't know, 15, 16 fish, which doesn't sound like a lot, but of those 15 or 16 fish, 10 of them were keepers. Most of them were smallmouth. We did have a couple of spots, but most of them were smallmouth, and some of them were some better smallmouth, 2.5, 3 pound smallmouth. Had one, we never saw it, but it was pulling pretty good. I would say it's probably another 2.5 or maybe even a 3 pound smallmouth. So the bite's getting good. It's going to get better with this water cooling off. We're going to get the water down closer to 60 degrees, and that crankbait bite will really take off. And like I said, I'm going to throw crankbait a bunch this week just to see if it's happening. But guys, you know, if you're thinking about coming down, wanting to hire a guide, maybe wanting to pre-fish for a derby, or you got a lake house you want to go fishing, or you're just coming down for the Christmas shows and you want to take a morning and go fishing, you want to hire a guide, give me a call. It's Focus Fishing Guide Service. You can reach me at 417-860-4743. Hit my website, focusfishing.com. You can either book online or shoot me an email. Either way, we'll get in contact with each other, figure out what dates and times work out best for you. But guys, thanks for watching the videos. Take a minute to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. But thanks for watching. Can't wait to hear from you. We'll see you on the water.